Hi, everyone. Are you having a good MAGFest? Are you having a fantastic time? I am so excited. So I'm going to just get the ball rolling right now. My name is Javon Goard. I wear many hats. I'm a PhD student at Johns Hopkins University. I'm a video game researcher and technically a CEO because I started my LLC a couple months ago. So, you know what I'm saying? And I'm also stepping into my brand new role here as department head of Mages. I'm one of three. So I'm also excited to fundamentally help, make Mages a space for different kinds of thought and people to be here. So I'm excited for that as well. So, are you all excited? Are you all ready to go? All right, so I am so excited. I'm overwhelmed, overjoyed, honestly, to be sitting on the same stage as these two lovely people. So I'm going to just do brief introductions, but they'll give a longer introduction for themselves. So I just want everyone to give a round of applause for co-founder and chief experience officer of Glow Up Games, Latoya Peterson. Latoya, you have any words for the people?
Words for the people? Well, we're going to start there.
Brief words for the people.
Brief words for the people. This is your panel. We came here for you. We came here to support you in whatever your journey is. We have been able to somehow make it in this industry. I am an entrepreneur and a frequent consultant. I speak. I just joined the Black in Gaming board. There's a lot of things that I do. Yes, big things coming, y'all, 2024. So there's a lot that we could talk about. Before I was in video games, before I had my own studio, I also did a lot of work with ESPN, did a lot of work with esports, also artificial intelligence and machine learning. Been a journalist before I was in esports, so I was on Jeff's side of the aisle before I switched over to becoming a practitioner. And so we're really just here to support you, answer your questions. I mean, we'll tell some stories about our time and what we see. But again, please feel free to make this your panel because we are here for you.
And last but certainly not least, I call him Brother Jeffrey, Brother Jeff. Give a warm round of applause for staff writer at gamesindustry.biz, Jeffrey Rousseau. Jeffrey, give some words.
I'm not too good with receiving accolades, but thank you.
Some more applause for Jeffrey. Let's go! Yay!
So aside from writing about, gaming as a business on a business website, I do still try to make it interesting for people who read. One of the things I try to do with my work is that to, inform people about the industry, all the things that you may not necessarily find good or bad, but things you need to be aware of, because I think arming people with information and knowledge is important, because we certainly don't want you to go into a business and not understand why it also reflects, the systems that exist in the real world, pertaining to layoffs and things. And we'll get into that, but mainly also with my skills as a writer, I also like to do social commentary. So you may have seen me on Twitter be extra spicy about how people kind of suck at representing Black people in games, because one, I like being shady, but also like being honest. So I love doing that. And it's just funny just that just being interested in these things and writing. Javon and I literally crossed paths at BlurredCon, and we just been friends. And as I've seen him grow in his career, he has also seen me grow in my career and literally become a journalist and do these things. And I'm still doing them, and I'm more than honored to be here with both of them for sure. So,
Brother Jeff, didn't you win an award last year?
I am.
Oh, I didn't forget. I was going to let the people know, but I want you to let the people know how great you are. Just say the whole title.
I won an award for Black in Gaming, which I am a part of. I am a director of press communications. And yes, I did win an award for, media excellence. So I'm an award-winning journalist. That's weird to say. Yeah. No, legit. My mama has the award in the living room.
That's all
right.
Yes.
So
Black Gaming Awards, I should mention, are just super, super dope if you get one because they have Jerry Lawson's Channel F cartridges that they engrave your name on. So, like, winning one of these is a big deal.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
Literally, as soon as you walk in, it's like right there. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here. So, thank you all for being here.
So, again, another round of applause for them just being here. Thank you so much. I'm so excited, again, to have these two amazing people a part of the industry who've also written about the industry in a lot of ways. Again, I'm come from the research landscape, so I typically write about the problem after it's already a problem. Dr. Gray knows what I'm talking about, right? But that allows me a particular kind of lens, seeing things from the outside. But then my job as a researcher, if you're a good researcher, you want to talk to the people who are inside, in the trenches, right? Ooh, it's almost the title was purposeful. So yes. So we're going to dive into some things. Some things they're going to be brutally honest with, okay? I did not ask these two people just to give you just, the industry talk or, they're under the zeitgeist of between like some higher entity. These are authentic people, and I am hoping that they'll give authentic answers, right? So if it makes you feel a little jumpy or like, oh, I can't believe they said that. Yes, they said that. Next question, please. Right? And that's the flow. Is that a good flow for you all? Does that work? All right. So up here, I just have a series of different questions, right? Again, we may diverge from these things, so do not hold us to these things, right? But this is just a good way to start us off, right? So first question, what or who inspired you to pursue your current professions?
Oh, okay. I guess I'll start first because y'all looking at me. Well, the reason why I'm a journalist is honestly because of my background. Ever since I've been little, my parents always had like the news on. It would be like the first thing I see leaving the door. So it's like whether it's like local news or like international stuff. Like in my head as a kid, I was just like, okay, this is important, and living in Miami is like, obviously I saw different kind of journalists, Black, Latino, folks who are Jewish. So it just made sense to me that people would be reporting on what's happening. And it made me think that, okay, this is a career field that's really worthwhile to pursue. And I didn't really pursue it. Like I wrote a little bit, I wasn't too good at it, but the people who impressed me and like inspired me, one name that comes to mind is like Karen Grisby Bates from like NPR. Well, I know she's not there anymore, but like she's a fantastic journalist. She never really I don't think she really covered games, but like her journalistic career is like fantastic. Just the way like she's done interviews and features, and when I do work, I think a lot about the things that I can do, like what I should strive for, but also more focused on the gaming space. It's like I've read some of Latoya's work in the past. I've read like Tiny the Past. Dr. Gray, who's in the audience, also like Khalif Adams, and like I looked at their work and I said like, why can't I? Of course, like Gita Jackson as well, and I asked myself like, why can't I do that? So I focused on that, and then I'm here. So I would say they inspired me to be here.
So you found folks who were doing the kind of things that you were interested in, but then you challenged yourself by saying, you know what, how come I can't do that? How come I can't step into that? When that was like a driving force for you.
Yeah, especially growing up, you really wonder, it's like, why is it, obviously like games journalism especially was very, well, one could argue it's still very white, male, cis, hetero oriented, as proven by websites and what faces you see. But like, yeah, I just asked myself, why can't it just be different people? It's like, I'm a dude from Miami, like, that alone tells you, it's just like, how do you end up in games journalism or whatever? And I was like, well, I'm glad you asked me that, But yeah, just different things just led me here. But mainly, the main driving force is like, I asked myself, why not me? And I asked myself, well, why isn't someone writing about these things? And when they do, why do you suck at it? There was a year Javon doesn't know this, but like there was a year like I almost like gave up like pursuing this, and I was just gonna like get a corporate job and just like I don't know, just doing that for the rest of my life. But I legitimately was very angry at myself because like the journalism that I saw, even though I wasn't like on major publications at that time, I told myself it's not good to like, you know, rate yourself like amongst other people, but like certainly not even trying just sucks even more. And I asked myself, it's just like, why am I not doing this? Like I gave up for like a year and I just kept getting angry. And I was getting angry because I wasn't doing anything. And when I was looking at what was being applauded for like good writing stunk. And it's like, do y'all talk to black people? Like, no, for real, no, I'm dead ass. Like, do you knock on your neighbor's door and just ask someone, like, hey, so what do you think about this? Versus like it coming from like a middle class, like white viewpoint. Mm-hmm. Not everybody perceives everything the same way, just based on the different intersections that we encompass. So anyway, long story short, we just need different kind of journalists. I grew up looking at different kind of journalists and reading their work and being inspired by them. That's why I'm here.
Fantastic. And Latoya, what about you?
So I wanted Jeff to go first for a reason, because all my jobs are made up as hell. Like they don't exist till I go do them. And I have two of my closest friends in the audience, Hay and Patty, who have been my friends. We've been going to cons together for 20 years now, y'all. Started at Otakon in 2004. And they remember what it was like before I had a career, because I didn't go to college. And I normally have to say this, I realize these days, because people assume when they look at my resume that I went to Stanford, because I did, but like that was later. And that I've had this like elite education path, and I've worked at all of these like huge companies. And I was like, no. I dropped out of college. I almost dropped out of high school. Like this was not a career path I thought I was going to get, and they can testify to that one back when I was working regular ass jobs. The reason I have the jobs that I do is because I ran my mouth on the internet. First in the blog era, where I had a blog called Racialicious. And we talked about race and pop culture, and we defined pop culture really broadly in a way that encompassed things like video games and comics and reality shows in a time that wasn't being done. And so we amassed this big fan base, and people were suddenly reading my work. And so I would go to my regular job. I think at the time I worked in federal procurement. That's what I was doing. I was a contract officer for the Library of Congress. And I would be...
So you're just going to just drop that and then you're just going to move on?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I also used to cut subs at Wimpy's, dog. Like, I had a bunch of jobs. Like, I was just working. And then the blog was getting so popular that, like, I would be under my desk, like, trying to do interviews. Like, one time we got interviewed Octavia Butler, which is, or before she died. And I was, like, under my desk at, the Library of Congress, like, trying to, like, do this interview real quick so my boss didn't see. And I was just like, damn, like, this internet thing is really starting to take off. Like, let me see if I could do something with it. And so that's what happened. By the way, fun story about Octavia Butler. So Octavia Butler used to work at a box factory. And she talked about, again, like the path to becoming a writer is just that you want to become a writer. Like, don't ever think that you have to do all these different things. Like, I was told directly when I was younger, when I was like 15 or 16, that it was too hard of a path to become a professional writer. And so I didn't even try, didn't pursue it. But I was writing on the internet, people liked my writing, and people could see what I was doing. So there's a big element of doing your work in public, whatever you want to do, because people can see you and then they will start helping you on that path. And so I got offers for my first ever writing gigs. The first one came from, I think, Bitch Magazine, which was a feminist response to pop culture. And I wrote about women's financial advice. That was my first ever published article. I got another one from Slate, and I remember like they wanted to pay me my week's salary that I worked at the LOC for like writing about vampire sex, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, how's this equivalent? Like, and I was like, well, if this is the hack I could do, I'm going to do that. And so from there, I've actually had about 3 different careers since that era. There was a career where I was like a writer and a host, and I've written everywhere from I was a music journalist, so I did Spin, Vibe. I wrote for Slate and Salon as a commentator. I worked for the New York Times quite a few times. I wrote for NPR. I was a host on NPR. I was a host on Al Jazeera, all of those different places. And so, had a big fan base, a lot of different stuff that was happening, but I realized I was not making the impact that I wanted to as a commentator. And in order to really influence the type of stories that we see in the media, I needed to level up. I needed to become a manager. So I changed direction. I did a night fellowship at Stanford. That's why people think I went to Stanford. Did a JSK night fellowship. Spent a year out there, learned product and management and doing all these different things, and I focused on mobile and mobile technologies and how they unite people, and particularly how we talk to communities of color in a very different way than you talk to folks in the mainstream. I was really into SMS and different types of news and messaging technologies. So that's what I was studying. I came out of there into news management, and so I came out of there to Al Jazeera America. I had worked at Al Jazeera on the show called The Stream, which again, now doesn't seem like such a big deal, but back then, social media was still new. It was the Arab Spring. Twitter didn't even have media guidelines back then, and we were sitting here reporting via Twitter. We had this big wall of tweets behind us. There are so many crazy stories I could tell about from the Jazeera days that were fantastic. But came out, did that, then got poached out of there to come to this thing called Fusion, which was about essentially like millennials and a new diverse audience for news. What is an op-ed in the age of Vine? At the time it was Vine. Now, now it'd be TikTok, but at the time it was Vine. And then I got poached out of there to go to ESPN's The Undefeated and help relaunch that site, which is about race and sports, which is where I ended up writing all the work about esports that Javon found. Because they realized, they were like, oh, Latoya likes video games. Who is this? There aren't that many black women at ESPN. There aren't that many black women in tech. There definitely weren't. Everybody knew who I was my first day on camp. I went to rookie camp, and there were a bunch of guys being like, so you're Latoya who wrote the video games piece. We know who you are. It was this whole thing. So I did that for many years. Disney was a fantastic place to work for because ESPN is owned by Disney. They put me in the AI and machine learning group as well as the AR VR group. Got to do some really cool global stuff. Made a lot of friends at like Lucas and all the other sub companies. So got to do a lot of stuff. Had my whole corporate girly era. Had a bunch of money and a nice expense account. It was really fun. Really miss those days. I'm broke now, so I'm like, no, it's not the same feeling. Running your own studio is not the same feeling.
Talk your shit.
It's true. But those were the good days, and you got your expense accounts. Everybody knows your name when you come to the hotel. It was nice. But I wanted to do more and go a little faster than what corporate will allow you to do. It was also Trump era, everything's starting to fall apart. You're just kind of like, what am I doing with my life? And so a friend of mine was a game developer for many, many years, Dr. Mithu Kandekar, and she had won a BAFTA and had done some indie games. And she was like, we should start a game studio. And I was like, I don't know nothing about that, but sure, why not? Let's figure this shit out, whatever. So we were talking, it was more like brunch conversation. You like hang out with your homies like, yeah, we should do this. Like, we should absolutely start this company, haha. Yeah, so the games industry is very small. So as Mithu and I were having these conversations, one of our friends who was working on a different project at HBO was like, oh, are you guys looking for a studio to do a game for Insecure? Latoya and Mithu are spinning something up. Why don't you talk to them? So we got this call out of the blue from HBO that was like, hey, do you want to pitch a game for Issa Rae? And we were like, well, yeah, yeah, exactly. We didn't even have a company. They were like, do you have a company name for the NDA? We were like, can we get back to you in 48 hours? Like, we didn't have any, we were not prepared. And so we jumped in. Samus, who will be performing later tonight, Anango Lumba Kasongo, is our chief rap officer. And so she helped design the system that we created called Rhyme Step, which is the first ever rap rhyme video game mechanic that is composition-based, not rhythm action-based. So we did that. We got the contract. We pitched to Issa directly. And there's this great picture of us from February of 2020 under the sign that says, what a time to be alive. Because we thought that sign was going to mean, it's the beginning of our video game career. And then the pandemic broke out. And then we didn't know if Insecure was going to have more seasons. All this stuff happened. However, we have survived. Globe Games is about to turn 5 next month. So we've been in business 5 years. We're the first all-women of color owned studio. We're the first all-women of color studio to raise more than $1 million in the games industry. We have done a second project with the Oregon Shakespeare Festival called Hella Iambic, which is about a hip-hop version of Romeo and Juliet that is also playable. We have 2 other projects. We've pitched to Meta. We do all kinds of stuff. We're speaking all over the place. I just spoke at CES, came back from that. We'll be speaking at DICE, speaking at GDC. So it has been a ride. And so there are so many different things. But like I said, my career is totally made up, and I never really know where it's going.
Holy shit. Just gonna put it out there. This is absolutely amazing to hear on both your trajectory about inspiration, right? One is definitely seeking out people who do the work. The other one is just, we're going to just see where the shit goes, right? But there's also this thing about this fervent energy that you're just keeping up with, right? So now that you're here in these particular positions, screw whatever I have up here. I'm very interested about a conversation to have with the both of you, especially in recent times, about the current state of the games industry. Now, what current state do you mean, Javon? Well, let's get into it. So, as of right now, and if you've been paying attention, we're seeing layoff after layoff after layoff from big tech companies, right? From your Amazons to your Googles, especially now in your games industry. And I know Brother Jeffrey, look at him scratching himself. He's like, oh. So, Brother Jeff, from your standpoint as a journalist who looks at these reports, what can we glean from what has happened? Like, is this a brief moment in time where they're just laying off people and then hopefully hiring new people? Is it a shift in the climate? Let me stop talking.
No, that is a good, legitimate question to ask. So, as someone I've written so many reports about that last year. Like, it's not funny, but it got to a point where I wrote multiple within a day and then multiple within a week, and then I literally just lost count, right? So before the year ended, it was estimated as like roughly like 10,000 people in like gaming or gaming related companies lost their jobs, right? And when you think about that number, that's a lot of people. And so for me personally, as a journalist and someone who just thinks a lot about like how we're surviving within these systems of oppression, capitalism, all that. When I hear or read, oh, it was a great year for games, I was like, maybe on Metacritic, sure. I'm happy for you that you like Baldur's Gate 3 and Spider-Man 2, but for me, no, because I just find that really insulting to say, because you have all these people who've been laid off. And also, I would like to add, I checked before we started our panel, like I think like 12 companies announced layoffs already in a year. So it's not that it's stopping. And the larger picture that I want people to think about is that when these things happen, what I want people to think about is like, what reason is in the company's giving? Is the CEO taking a pay cut? And also, what are they saying about their business? Now, you tend to notice these things tend to happen around before quarterly earnings or shortly thereafter. And the thing is, it's all about cost cutting. And the larger point I want people to realize, and I'm sure Latoya can attest to this, is like, the industry is a machine. Yes, it's small, but it's a machine. And I hate to say it like this, but I have to be very truthful. You got to understand, a lot of it is these transactional relationships with people. It's like they want you to buy things. These companies need to operate and create the games that they make and hit their sales goals and make their shareholders happy. And yes, they will lay off 1,000 people. And the thing is, I don't want people to think about things like it's a moral thing. It's not a moral thing. These are institutions of capitalism. Like, people need to understand that. And I am not a game developer, but I've spoken to enough of them where I realize it's like, shit, man, I'm trying to do the best I can with what I have available, right? And I think it's amazing that people don't lose heart. But what I would say is that the way I perceive all that is that think less about being angry, but really trying to understand like the pre-existing conditions that led to this. Like, why is this happening? And why is it not only gaming? Like, if you look at tech, for example, you know, that is bad. If you look at media layouts as well, that is bad. Like, before, recently, I think a report broke, like, Sports Illustrated is like laying off people. Like, think about that. Sports Illustrated, that's an institution that's been around for like, I'm 38. Like, they've been around since I've been a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, think about that. So, the thing about these layoffs is that I hate to say they won't stop. They won't. What I would say is that if you definitely want to pursue a career field into this, you certainly want to put yourself in a position where you would feel safe that your job isn't likely to be one where like you're on a chopping block. As fucked up as that is, I don't even know if I can cuss. I'm sorry, but like,
No, yeah, you can.
you know,
Do what you do, bro.
yeah.
Oh, but yeah, it's too late now.
It's too late now. But
Don't open that box. Don't open that box.
But yeah, it's like what I certainly want people to understand is like there's a reason why when you read a report about layoffs and you're reading it from like myself or any of my colleagues, there's a reason why there's gonna be a bullet point in there that's gonna say, oh, by the way, this company made like 500 million or $1 billion last year. There's a reason why we put that bullet point in there so you can think about the larger pictures. Like, was this necessarily necessary? The thing about my job is I read financial reports. Like I really have to read them and study them and break down the information that's really key as to like how much money this company is making, why, what the CEO is saying about their operations and stuff like that. And I can say professionally, there's really no reason to be laying off all these people. Like I've seen the numbers. I've seen so many numbers. Oh Jesus Christ. There really is no reason.
It's because they want their bonuses.
So, yes. CEOs, I have not ran into a story recently about a CEO taking any cuts of any kind. But anyway, I'm rambling. People need unions desperately. That's one of the things that would help. People need unions, all right?
Thank you, Brother Jeff.
You ready?
No, please. Go ahead.
Ready?
Yeah, the floor is yours.
The floor is yours, Latoya. Let me get my water
Please.
first.
Yeah. You want to take some water first?
Yeah, take some water first. In the audience, if you have water, you take some water. Salud.
So let's go. All right, darling. So I used to be where you were, right? I was reporting on this. Why would this happen? Why this happen? And then now I'm a studio owner, right? My little studio is 5 employees. Payroll is $38,000 a month for my 5 people. I have to cover that every single month. I pay my employees health insurance because we live in America and it's fucked up. You don't get health insurance. If I hire a Canadian developer, they never ask me that question. If I hire anybody from Europe, nobody asks me that question. If I pay health insurance, my investors, my investors personally, because my investors are the dopest people on the planet, but investors in general look at that as a liability. Why do you have so many fringe benefits on your sheet? Taking care of people is penalized in such a big way. And money's expensive. So the way that you do a games budget is that you look at what they used to call a man month. And so you can be on the side of the industry that's a little safer. I wouldn't say anything is safe at this point. That's a little bit safer. So like a technical artist, right? Like Ethan. So Ethan was our founding technical artist. Ethan Red, who's fantastic, Virtuoso Neo Media. Look him up. He is a fantastic person. Him and his brother Seth now have their own studio. But Ethan left to start his own studio after 3 years on the project. To replace him, I would need to pay $16,000 a month to a technical artist to have somebody come in. And I have a small studio, right? If we don't have contracts coming in, we don't have cash coming in, that's not going to work. You can dial that up, though. Volition just went under, the creators of Saints Row. Why did Volition go under? Volition went under because the deal that they had, that they were hoping for the venture investment, fell through. A lot of video games is a house of cards. The money actually is not there. It's billions and billions of dollars a year, but for some reason, nobody seems to have any. Okay, none of us, it doesn't matter. I contract with a AAA studio now. I do narrative consulting for them. They got the same problems I got. I was like, how do y'all have billions of dollars and you still can't? They were like, we got a hiring freeze. I can't do shit. Like, what do you want me to do? We got 3 people. That's supposed to be 11. Like, everybody is stressed out, right? Like, we are all like, I thought I was fucking up in my indie studio, but now I'm like, well, I was like, man, you made The Witcher and you having these problems, like. I feel privileged and blessed every day because I'm like, wow. But let's talk about why that is, right? So we can talk about capitalism. We can talk about unions. And I came from TV and film where we have very strong unions. One of the reasons unions doesn't work in the games industry is because the money is so volatile. Yep. Everything is pretty much wins. And when you go to these venture summits, you go to these things. So for example, just to give you guys a sense of the capital landscape, video games is a small subset of broader venture capital. They're considered high risk. The people who invest in video games are the people who invest in cannabis and crypto, right? So number one, we're having the amount of people who have blown a vape while I'm in a meeting pitching them something, I think I'm up to like 17. of like somebody will hit a vape in the middle of this business meeting, like, hold on, like, god damn, like, okay, we're doing this. We haven't even gotten to the level of men who talk to just your boobs, but we'll get there. And it's generally men, because the games industry is roughly 26% female and less than 3% black. So they rarely ever see people like us. When we were raising money for Insecure, the number one thing we got asked is, who is Issa Rae? At this time, Issa Rae was the voice of the NBA. She was the voice for March Madness. And most of the investors we talked to had never heard of her, had never seen the show, and had no idea this was a cultural thing. Our contacts at HBO sat in on meetings with us to explain. They're like, hey, we did all these Game of Thrones games. It's our largest property. But our second most socially engaged with show after Game of Thrones is Insecure. Like, this is a cultural force. And publishers were like, okay, cool, but not interested. Like, who? We answered a lot of questions. Do women play games? Remember, we were pitching for this in 2018. I was like, I thought we saw this in 1990. Like, what the fuck? But do women play games? Do women like strategy? Do women even do? Like, one investor was thinking out loud. He was like, oh yeah, they liked Pokemon Go. All the girls playing Pokemon. Maybe they like that. Do girls like rap? Do girls like hip hop? What is this? Yes. Oh yeah, we're here. My favorite. Do you girls really play games? You're so cute. Are you sure? What games do you, name 3 games that you like? Yeah, in pitch meetings all the time. If you get one. Meanwhile, let it be some white dude in the basement and they're like, A16Z's like, here's $5 million. What do you have an idea? Oh my God, the stories I could tell about that. But the overarching point of this is like, yeah, the CEOs never really take pay cuts, especially if they're publicly traded companies, because they don't have to. Why would they? Video games is run by spreadsheets. Everything else looks very, very sexy, but all of video games is spreadsheets. Either it's financial documents or all the stuff underneath the game is spreadsheets. Spreadsheet. If I'm making how is this business going to be sustainable? We took a loss. A game didn't perform the way that we wanted it to perform. We took a $500 million write-down. That comes out of your staff. That comes out of their pay. And they cut people ruthlessly. All of the glamour industries, like I said, I've worked in TV and film. I've worked in sports. They all run on exploitation. You're making less because you love it, and they know you love it, and they know that you will do anything that you need to do to get there. When I worked in magazines, magazine publishing would pay you $26,000 a year, hoping that you had family money to live on, because they would expect you to still live a lifestyle like you made $100,000, but they know they're gonna only pay you $26K. So every industry I've worked in, from journalism on, has been at its core exploitative. And when you try to build something that's not, you try to build something that's worker-owned, or you try to build something that, like I said, gives your employees health insurance or whatever, you are penalized because you are competing with people who are going to outsource that labor, who are going to pay, some developers out in the Philippines $100,000 to do what would cost in America appropriately $600K to do. And your users on the other end of the store have no idea what you did. They don't care. Was the game fun? Am I playing it? Do I like it? That is the only question they ever ask. And so there are all these different things around labor and developers. You had EA spouse, later then you had Rockstar spouses. But one of the things that you'll learn as a dev in the industry is that nobody gives a fuck about you. So you just do the best that you can. We are all trapped in this weird thing. And you try to make it better, and you try to do stuff. I try to make sure that we're hiring people, that we're giving people shots, that people get put on. But sometimes it just feels like you are throwing pebbles into the ocean in terms of turning the tide of what this is. And the folks who have the most money are the least interested in figuring out how to distribute it.
Okay.
To add to what Latoya said, a lot of the times, Volition, for example, that's 30 years just, right? And when you think about it, the last Saints Row that came out did not do well. That came right after that game was developed, so that's something to think about. And yes, ruthless is the word.
Yeah, so think about it like a game, right? So like I said, I'm consulting on a new game. This game is a year into its development cycle, and it'll be 5 more years before it comes out. And a fully staffed up game, like I said, they have hundreds of departments all around the world. It's a really big company that I work for. Hundreds of companies all around the world, and they're going to be investing this money without seeing a return for 5 years. If the game fails, that is a really, really, really high pressure thing to be doing. Like, you have to have a certain level of numbers, you have to have a certain Metacritic score for you to keep going. And so people also talk about like, that kills the innovation in the industry. Because people are like, oh, well, how come people don't take risks or do things? Like when we created Rhyme Step, which is our rap rhyme composition mechanic, the number one thing investors said, they were like, you're making a new mechanic. That's risky. It's gonna take you like 6 years, which, and for real, they were right. Like we're year 3 in Rhyme Step being live. The only reason Rhyme Step exists is we were too stupid to know how hard that shit was gonna be. Like, it works. It works well enough that another big games company that makes music games tried to poach Samus from us, and we had to have a homegirl conversation like, bitch, we happy for you, but you can't leave. Like, we can't replace you, and you'll kill it. Like, we need you to stay, like, homegirl to homegirl, like, we need you more, okay? Like, we want you to succeed, but we also want to succeed. Like, it was ask Samus about it after her concert. But that was the first signal we got that we did something right. That a company like that created games that sold 50 million copies would come after our director and try to poach her because they tried to make a rap game and it didn't work. Because video games, I gave a talk about this at NYU. But before I got into the industry, I thought video game design was a science. And now I know that shit is alchemy. It is not a science. The amount of stuff that fails, like I will be sitting there because my little game be struggling. And I'm like, oh, and then I saw an article. Maybe you wrote it, I don't know. But it was it was an article about a Square Enix game that they launched, and they only had 7 concurrent players. And I was like, yo, my game sucks, and we got 11. I'm doing good. Like this day we won over Square Enix made Final Fantasy. How did they fuck this up? But that is video games. Nobody knows anything. It's the most humbling career I have ever been in because it's like, yeah, you did that shit. That was great last week, but what did you do today, bitch? What did you do today? Video games is brutal. So it is not a science. It is alchemy. And every single month, every single year, user preferences are changing. The technology is changing. Apple was like, hey, fuck your privacy stuff. Facebook took out an entire section of the industry called hyper-casual games that were built on basically running programmatic ads. Hyper-casual was the hottest thing, and then it just got killed. iOS update, iOS 14, boom, killed that whole industry. Everything was out. Move on. All the investment money dried up. This is video games. Everything you learn today is out of date in 2 years. Anything that succeeds is a fucking miracle.
So this is the time to switch to the more positive part of the conversation. Someone say, holy shit. Look, brother, I'm supposed to be moderating this thing. But no, these things are true, right? Even in a researcher's perspective, right? I read these things and I see these stories and I distill all of this and I come to the same conclusions, right? Where I'm just like, okay, we're talking about exploitation to its core, at its root. It's founded on it, right? We're talking about cis-het white men, right, who hold capital, right? And then some of them who believe that they're on the side of social justice, right? They're looking for spaces to give their money to, right? But then they start to do their own research, whatever that is, and there's like, oh, well, I got to pull out for this reason. Well, what's my return on investment? Am I saying too much?
Who did you see? Which white man you see trying to give money to people? Because let me give you a name. Ed Freeze from Microsoft. He's funding every woman of color I know got a check from Ed Freeze's fund. Okay, but everybody else, bitch, where? Who? Because we all keep notes. I got a little Discord of other studio owners. Who paid you where? What's going on? Who cut that check for that? We all talk to each other. I'm gonna tell you right now, they make that noise. Like when George Floyd happened. Mm-hmm. I gave a whole GDC rant on this, by the way. There's a rant in the archives of GDC. Because all these companies were like, we should do something about racial justice.
Yeah, I wrote an article.
All these games companies with black employees and ERGs, what did they do? Where is that money? What happened? Mm-hmm. Nobody knows. A lot of it never even was allocated. They didn't even they were like, we should do something. We're going to pledge $20 million. Ain't even cut the check. Half of that shit doesn't even exist. So you go back and look at the pledges. Half the time they're also like, we should give some money to the NAACP. Meanwhile, all these black employees are like, or resource training, or we could get raises, something. We can try to stay in this industry. Nothing. So there are so many things where people like to talk because it sounds good, but then let them. I got a story for you. Let them feel like they are relaxed and behind closed doors, right? Then you hear the real shit comes out, right? Then you hear the real shit comes out. There is a fund that shall not be named, also because we took a check from them and it was a shit check, but you know what? They gave us a check, so we didn't say. So I can't technically go on the record about this one. But this fund has turned down every black entrepreneur I know that has tried to get into their accelerator program. Everyone, for some reason, isn't ready. And there's a friend of mine who is fantastic. And she was the art director over 2 major AAA games, Lisette Teacher Montgomery. If you saw an episode of an issue of Black Enterprise that had a black girl on the cover saying Game 1, that's Lisette. Lisette got famous because they did the Tiger Woods PGA golf game, and it was her and her friends who added them dance animations in there, so it was all fly. That was Lisette and her friend Jeff. Like, again, black people. Don't let us have any kind. We're like, yeah, we can make that shit. hype that shit. We just do too much. Lisette, I was like, you know, Lisette, you are the truth that proves the lie, because everything that they told us we are not, you are. So when you raise money for your company, come talk to me. I just want to see how it's going to go. Yeah, we need more experience. We need y'all to have AAA. We need you to have shipped a AAA game that's made more than 20 million copies. We need this, we need that. Lisette still ain't raised the way that she should have. So once again, right, there's what people say, and then there's what happens behind closed doors. And a lot of times what you learn about venture capital, it's interesting. Like, I can't even go to the little panels anymore about it, because they're like, this is how you raise money for your game. It's going to be scalable and whatever. And I'm like, but I've been here, and I've done this, and I've raised, and 90% of your raise is, did they feel like they like you? Are you somebody they relate to? Do they feel like you're cool? Do they want to have you on their yacht party? Do they want to talk about you to other people? Your numbers can be as great and beautiful and wonderful as they need to be. I got a friend that has a game that has 7 million downloads. And when she goes to investors, sometimes they're just not feeling it. It's not that her game wasn't popular. It's just they're like, all right, well, it's not for me. It's very, very subjective. And that bias in the subjection is where you're starting to see these big structural inequalities play out. A lot of it comes down to, are you the person that I think you should be to get this money?
So, shameless plug.
Hold on.
wait.
As someone who unfortunately has to write a lot about venture capital stories and what have you, you know what I don't see? I do not see us.
Do you know why that is?
I do, because I've noticed that a lot of these companies, they look a certain way, and the people that they fund look like them for some reason.
So, again, story time. If you look at the EEOC filing for Activision Blizzard in California, it was big news, Bloomberg covered it. You can see a lot of stuff. They systemically forced out a lot of women who were department heads, and there was only one black woman even named, and she was specifically targeted. So when you leave and you go try to raise money for your studio, they're gonna say you don't have the experience heading a game. But if you look at all the documentation, they force us out before you ever get there. So no, you're not gonna have that experience running a triple game. You're not gonna survive that long. And then most of us are corporate. So most of the folks who invest in games are people who've made money in games, right? It's Will Wright, it's Neil Stephenson, it's, you know who the fuck they are. It's all people, it's George Romero, it's John Romero, sorry. It's all people that if you can see a game that was very popular, that person is probably investing. They might not be investing in games either, which is a whole other conversation about that ecosystem. But they might not invest in games. But most of us, as people of color, have not made the level of money to become an investor. To give you a sense, an accredited investor, somebody who can give me money into my company, needs to make a minimum of $250,000 per year to be considered qualified as an accredited investor or have $1 million in standing assets before the SEC will allow you to invest in my company. In general, checks that I received from black investors were lower, normally $5K to $25K. And checks that I received from white investors were $50K to $100K. The wage gap plays out in this in a lot of ways. And then again, think about who has made money in games. When you think about the most prominent people in games, they are generally workers, they're corporate. You got Reggie at Nintendo. You have Jacqueline Beauchamp, who used to have a studio 10 years ago. You got Gordon Bellamy, right? Like, all these people are amazing, they're luminaries. They work for a living, they work at their jobs. They make enough money to be accredited investors, but not enough money to be like, oh, They're not like Sid Meier sitting on fucking Civilization money, right? Like, these are different levels of cash and capital. So when you go invest, and then black investors tend to be more conservative than other types of investors. So most, like, we talked to Harlem Capital, we talked to all of those places. They want to support us, but they've never done a games deal. And games is scary, high rate of failure. So the only people who are willing to invest in games
Very
are generally
high.
people who were, like 90% of games don't ever ship. So people who invest in games are people who were successful here, and the people who were successful here are people who are in the Bros Club, because that's how that tends to go. And so you're, like I said, you're fighting this war on a lot of different fronts, because it's just like you're already in this small sector. And then when you get into the VCs, because VCs are basically just people with money. Like, they're not smarter than anybody else. They're not better. Like, they make it sound like it's scientific. That shit is not. It is a bunch of bros on yachts. It's bros with money. It's just, when you raise venture capital, you don't raise in December and August because all these motherfuckers are on vacation. Like, you just don't. They're away. They're like, I'm with my child in Vail. Like, nobody is talking. They're just rich, okay? Like, that's all it is. And you go and you're trying to pitch your company to people. Now, I can say this because, again, we actually did raise. Like, the amount of black studio owners that reach out to me because they had to fold their studios because they could never get money is kind of amazing to me. We actually did successfully raise. Issa Rae is on my cap table. Baron Davis is on my cap table. We got this whole bunch. We have Black Founders Matter, Gangels, Ed Freeze's One Up Fund. Like, we raised from a lot of really awesome people. Dennis Crawley, who created Foursquare, is on our cap table. Chris McGuire, one of the co-founders of Etsy, is on our cap table. Like, we got a lot of people who saw what we were doing and invested in us and wanted to be there with us. It's just a really hard space. Unless, again, you get A16Z at your back, and then, you just write the check, and it's cool.
So, shameless plug as it relates to the receipts. I wrote an article about that as it was happening. So if you go on your phones and type in games industry, so black folks, the receipts, you'll see their pledges, right, from the Pokemon company and all that stuff, and how much they pledge. Now, of course, I want to do a follow-up to that, which is, where the hell is the money? Did it go to the... No, it's fair, right? Everyone around George Floyd, for as tragic as it still is, right, you did a lot of pledging, right? And that's fine, but black people know this from years, decades, centuries, knowing that nothing is ever given to us, right? Not willfully, right? And so it's just like, okay, you can say these things because typing words and giving money is easy, right? What you did not see is, this is how much of a portion of our company we're going to invest in making sure black people are into the fold. That's what you didn't see. Money, again, is very easy, right? If you have it. The hard part, and what they don't want to do and don't want to say, right, because that's a long-term investment, is actually putting people into the fold, right? Now, we're approaching close to time, in like 12 minutes or so, but I really want to make sure that people's questions are addressed. So, but you gotta do me a favor. I love you all. You probably have fantastic life stories. This is great. And we can talk about your life stories after this panel is technically over. So, if you have a question, I need you to have a direct question. And then I'm gonna have my panelists, one of them address the question, and then we move on. Because there's a lot of you, and a lot of you have interesting thoughts, but we gotta get this ball rolling. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
All right, you can tell just how I'm like it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
All right, so if you have a question, just I guess raise your hand or whatever, and then we'll go from there. Yes.
Hi, my question is about how we've been seeing a lot more AI usage in the industry, even though there has been pushback from developers. I'd like to hear both of your opinions, if possible, especially from like the VC and studio side.
Okay, so the question on the floor is about the proliferation of AI in gaming spaces. Is that fair to?
What's that? Okay. Great question. So, one thing I think about recently is that there was a story where I believe the CEO of Square Enix, he said that, we're using more AI technology in game development. And I know folks didn't take too well to that. But the thing is, when we hear that, what we don't necessarily know is how long have companies been using that? These are massive institutions with a lot of capital and a lot of people working there. They've probably been using this stuff for what, 5-6 years, and we just didn't know. Like, for all we know, Final Fantasy VII Remake could have been created partially with AI, and we just didn't know that, right? So I guess the larger question is that are these tools going to necessarily replace people? I highly doubt that. Companies can they can strive for, you know, having things be as robotic as possible, but the thing is, you still need people to work in things. So they could do whatever they want, and, you know, it's like, if it's shoddy, it's not gonna work. And hell, AI can't even talk like me, right? So how are you gonna expect it to do something as complicated as game development? Like, let's be for real.
So that was my panel at CES. I was on with Dean Takahashi. We did a whole panel on AI democratizing game development, because at this point you can't afford not to use it. It's just a thing. It is going to speed up a lot of the stuff, and it's been used for 20 freaking years. Like, my favorite people to learn AI from are game developers, because like, if you learn it from like the Google people, they're very like snooty about it, and they're like, you need your 4 PhDs and whatever, and game developers are like, fuck that shit, you just need Wolfram Alpha, figure out what equation you need to run, and then somebody else will run that shit for you. It's fine, don't worry about it, just throw it at it, it'll work out.
It got me through math class.
Yes, I love game developers. They're always like, fuck, it'll work, don't worry about it, and it will probably break, but it'll be cool if it breaks, don't worry about it. That's game development. Google is like, it's going to be 15 years and we need to have like a line, and game developers are like, what, you need to work like next year? Like, let's get this shit together. Like, anyway, you can't afford not to use it, and it's already in place. It's been in place for 25 years. That's how your NPCs work. It's all little AI scripts and little things like that. It's just getting more sophisticated, and with ChatGPT, more people are understanding, oh, you can use this. So a lot of folks, even folks who work in the industry for a long time, are now using ChatGPT to run code and write programs. Because again, even if you're an accomplished coder, it's not possible for you to know every language, everything. But if you know what you're trying to do and you just type into a prompt, boom, there it is. Same thing with art. Now, there's a lot of like legal issues to AI stuff, so particularly around music and art, and specifically around copyright, where a lot of studios have banned using it, because again, like, you can't do it. And in a lot of ways too, AI, as Jeff said, cannot replace humans. So like, all our characters are black. Have you had AI try to talk like a black person? No. I got job security for the next 20 years. This is not a thing they can do. I was like, you built this shit on racist tech anyway. You're using Reddit scrapes, and that's where the voice comes from? Bullshit. This is not gonna work. So it's fine, just let that be what it is. I'm not gonna worry about that piece. The other thing that is really interesting about AI and game development is how it puts the power in the hands of folks that it used to need a team of 70 and now it doesn't. And again, that it's a wobbly thing, right? AI is really, so think about AI as like a dumbass calculator. If you actually work with it, just think about it as the dumbest motherfucking TI-83 that you have. It gives you exactly what you want, but no more, and then it'll jump to its own conclusions and be all fucked up. So like, I did an NVIDIA AI training, the thing they teach you with computer vision specifically. How does computer vision know what kind of dog is in a photo? Because you feed it millions of images and it comes back. So like, they realized that a computer, like the AI program, could recognize a husky 99% of the time. Why? Because huskies are only photographed in snow. The shit was picking up the snow, it wasn't looking at the dog. Like, it's a calculator, okay? Just like, this shit is a calculator. Don't make it better than it is. It's a calculator, it's a TI-83, basically. More complicated, but it's a TI-83. And so it does weird things, it does conclusions. There's a guy on Twitter, Gabriel, I forget his last name. He's a game developer, does a lot with AI, and he tells the most hilarious stories. Like, one time he had programmed the AI to like be attuned to the player and how the player was going, and then he was like, all of his AI creatures were disappearing. And he's like, what the fuck? They kept disappearing. Like, why would they disappear in the middle of this level? And he realized the AI did the calculation, realized the player was more powerful, was going to kill it, and so it just ran to the end of the map and hid. And it just kept doing that. And he was like, what the hell? So then he was like, nah, I got to reprogram this. So he reprogrammed it. He's like, no, like, you need to confront the player. So then it was like, okay, the only way we're going to win, we're going to jump this motherfucker. So they went all like, programming AI for games is just insanity. But yeah, so anyway, but the issue is, honestly, if you're trying to get funding right now and you're not talking about AI, you are not getting any money, because they're like, your studio's gonna get left in the dust. And the potential for those of you who are indie developers who don't have strong coding skills is that at this point, a lot of stuff, like the person I was on the panel with, Yanni, Yanni has a company called BitMagic, where it's just type to text. I want a mountain scene and 3 NPCs and 2 enemies. Pop, there it is. Now you're just staging your game faster than Unreal. So 10 years from now, game development's going to look totally different. Like, you're not going to have to sit there and like fight through fucking Unity scripts and stuff like that anymore. You'll be able just to say, this is what I want to happen. Where the innovation always lies is in the brains of the humans that are doing this, to be able to outthink a machine. AI serves you what you want and what it thinks you want, and it serves you the same thing over and over and over again. Humans are powered by serendipity. We encounter things, we think of new things, we yearn for new things, we want to find new worlds. We are the ones that control it. So if your job is something that can be easily duplicated, if it's like a rote position, you're in a lot of danger from AI. If you understand the creative part of what happens, a computer can't do that part, only you can. That is the way that you kind of, I don't even say future-proof because that's not a thing. The future will change in 5 years. It's not predictable. But that is the thing that makes you more valuable than a fucking machine.
So we're at 5 minutes. So depending on your question, hopefully you can take 1 or 2 more. I saw Jay's hand first.
Ubisoft came out lately and said that gamers should get comfortable not owning their games. What do you think that means with subscriptions kind of taking over our lives? What do you think that means for developers who aren't executives, and then also for consumers who are used to owning their games?
So pretty much game development companies are basically saying, get used to not owning shit anymore. How do we feel?
You want it?
You
Okay.
always have to
So I think that also feeds into the larger question about like physical and digital media, because the truth is, if you don't have any like physical games, I hate to tell you, you don't really own it, because the thing is, if for whatever reason PlayStation or whoever just decides, well, we're not gonna have this anymore, it's deplatformed or whatever, like, you'll have it on your hard drive, but if something happens and it's wiped and you just can't download it anymore, it's like you just don't have it. And that's happened, right? And the thing about these companies, and that also brushes up against the question of like video game preservation, which I just think companies don't really care for. I'll just be perfectly honest, they don't really care for. So regarding that subscription thing, I just think that's just another notch in this, like, well, here's something else we can charge you for to have this thing that you think you have. And then we'll say 5 years later, oh no, you really don't have it. Here's another thing you got to pay for to have it. That's honestly what I think, and what I've seen in just reading like ridiculous reports about these things. Like, I'm sorry, buy physical media.
Digital rights management is like one of the biggest issues that we're going to hit. Same thing with copyright, because copyright was worked out more than 100 years ago, and it does not work for what's happening here. So even like Amazon is in a big fight with libraries right now, because libraries are about giving people stuff for free, and Amazon's like, fuck that shit, you need to keep paying us every time. And so there's a big fight, because again, like, you're supposed to be able to have books on Kindle and stuff like that, you can't. For a company like Ubisoft, right, they have shareholders. Shareholders are like, well, you know, how are your recurring earnings coming up? Like, your ARR is too, your annual recurring revenue, monthly recurring revenue, MRR, ARR. You will hear this all the time if you actually go raise some money. How much money do you make per month? How much money do you make per year off this game? If those numbers aren't going up, your investors aren't happy and they think that your company's doing well. You know, now, you might not want to exploit your players that way, but that's the game. They're looking at everybody else. How come their numbers are up and yours aren't? What's wrong with you? So you figure out other ways to do things. The other piece about DRM that's really interesting that I found as a studio owner is that a lot of these things are about the way in which you buy rights. So for example, Samus is our homegirl. Samus does all of our music for the game. Samus has given us a global in perpetuity right to her music forever. But because of the way that music industry is just grimy, I put in Samus's contract that it's not transferable. So if anybody ever buy Glow Uptick, they would have to renegotiate and actually pay Samus for the music that she's created. But what that does is they could also choose not to do it, and so therefore the game will be re-released with no music or whatever happens. You'll see this sometimes DVDs of old shows, all the music is stripped out because the rights expired. And as we're getting into this world where like everybody kind of has like rights to different things, rights to character images and different pieces, when things expire, it's not always easy to come back and get them, which is why sometimes stuff gets pulled out of the store. Sometimes people built shit illegally. That happens a lot in games. You built something illegally and then somebody puts a claim in and they got to pull the game out of the store. There's a lot of things that are happening in this ecosystem because things are not built to be permanent anymore. So that's ultimately what it is. We got to knock at the door. Mysterious. Okay.
So it's 8:59. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna wrap up with a few touch points. So first touch point. There's nothing really stopping you in getting into the game development space, right? Your career can be vast and wide, right? You can start from pretty much anywhere and find your way into game development. The difference is terms of your access to technology, right? How much effort you're willing to put in and being firmly comfortable that it's going to be a long ass journey with no particular payoff in any near future, right? You have to be comfortable with that. All right, like shaking your head, right? You just have to be comfortable with that. The research says that. They said that, right? And then another thing is about understanding the landscape in which you're in. This is
Can I
video.
just add
Go
one
for it.
line?
Uh-huh.
One of the most popular talks at the Game Developers Conference, our big industry ball, is how to survive in game dev for 11 years without a hit. This shit is brutal, y'all. It's so bad. Keep going. But that talk I think is free now. You can look at it for YouTube, but it's one of the most popular talks is how to survive in game dev for 11 years with no hit. Keep going.
And then to cap it all off, just at the end of the day, recognize the spaces that you're in. Also know that there are resources out there for you, but it will take a lot of gumption, a lot of courage, right? And a lot of just dealing with the muck of things, right? And I'm talking about all the isms, right? Ready to be like sexism, right? Heterosexism, all those things, right? Being comfortably, not even comfortable, being aware that those things won't come up, they will come up, right? If it doesn't happen in this meeting, it could happen in the next meeting. And it's being prepared for the clapback, as one of my professors said to me, right? So if you're good in being prepared for the clapback, then hopefully, yes, your studio will become a Glow Up Games, if not more, right?
Please be better than me. Please. But also, not to be super. The other thing too is that games are magic, okay? And like, the amount of people who want to help you just because you want to make a game, like you don't even have to be black, honey. Like just come call us. We all know how hard it is. Most people want to help you. There are some people who are assholes, and you can just ignore them. It's fine. But Reggie, who used to run Nintendo, Reggie Fils-Aimé, I literally just sent him a cold email, never met that man. And I was like, I am a black female studio owner. Please help me. I don't know. Help. And he responded because there's so few people who actually can make it. Like the people who have actually been able to launch and ship a game, it's still a small crew of people. And they want to hear from you. We might be busy. We might not get back to every email. But most people want to help folks who are starting out because we remember how fun it feels to actually make your game come to life. So just think about it this way. Everybody wants to help you. There's all this other horrible shit that you'll encounter, so don't worry about that. You can start sailing on the sea and then like the fucking monsters come. But before then, it's you and your friends on the boat. Think about it that way.
So just one of those social media things. You can follow me, Twitter, X, whatever Elon's calling it. Javon on the program. I'm also on Instagram at thatboyjoven as well. Latoya, where can people find you or get connected with you?
I'm supposed to be on social media, and I'm really not because I got too much other shit to do. I'm technically on TikTok at GameDevMom. I'm technically on Twitter still. Not really. I lied. But if you, I know, right? See, I don't even make TikToks like that. But yes, I am.
No.
I
It's
am.
cool.
I'm on it. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
I know I'm not. I'm a fucking millennial. I'm aware.
Right.
Right. I'm aware. My TikTok looks like a millennial's TikTok. Give me a minute to catch up. Instagram at Latoya P. LinkedIn, Latoya D. Peterson. I'm easy as fuck to find on the internet. And then, like, if you hit me on Twitter, I still check the @ mentions. So if you're asking me a question, I will come respond. Other than that, Elon can die in a fire. Fuck that man. But it's a whole other conversation. Anyway.
Oh my God.
That man wants to bring back chattel slavery in space. We don't need to give him any quarter. Anyway, we'll talk about that another day. That's another panel. Sorry, Jeff.
Oh yeah. Well, if you Google me, like all this stuff should come up. So and that's JEFFREY, Rousseau, ROUSSEAU. Even though it's spelled that long, it's 2 syllables when you say the name. But it should be JR Potential on Twitter, Instagram. It's very easy to find me on LinkedIn because like I should be like the first Black Jeffrey that you see. Or the only one. I don't know. But you'll know it's me. It'll be like, it's like I haven't updated my profile because I have locks now, but like you'll know it's me. So add me.
We are unfortunately very easy to find.
Yeah. No, for real. It's funny. Like, I told somebody that, like, was interviewing them, and he's like, haha, that's funny. No, and he literally said, oh, shit, you are, like, the first black coordinator.
And with that, thank you all for being here.